I, 32, have been married to my husband, Mark, for 5 years. The first four were what I would have called happy. We built a life together, a comfortable one, in a small house with a yard we both loved. But the last year, something shifted. A distance grew between us, a quiet chill that settled in the spaces where laughter used to be. He started working late more often, his excuses vague but plausible. He was in sales, a field known for its demanding hours and unpredictable schedule. I tried to be understanding. I really did. I told myself that this was just a phase, a rough patch that all couples go through. I focused on my own work as a freelance graphic designer, finding comfort in deadlines and creative projects that I could control. The one bright spot in my life recently had been a small inheritance I received after my father passed away. It was not a life-changing amount of money, but it was enough to give me a sense of security, a cushion against the uncertainties of freelance work and my husband's growing emotional distance. I used a portion of that money to buy myself a new car. It was the first brand new car I had ever owned. It was a practical SUV, but it felt like a luxury to me. It smelled new, it ran smoothly, and it had all the modern features I had only ever read about. One of those features was a mobile app that allowed me to lock and unlock the doors, check the fuel level, and even locate the vehicle using GPS. It also had a feature I hoped I would never need, an emergency engine immobilizer. The salesman had explained it was an anti-theft measure. If the car was ever stolen, I could call the service, and they could remotely shut down the engine, making it impossible to restart without the physical key fob. I later discovered I could activate a temporary version of this feature myself directly through the app. It was a novelty, a piece of technology that felt like something out of a spy movie. I never imagined it would become the tool I would use to dismantle my own marriage. The trouble started on a Tuesday afternoon. Mark called me from his office. His voice was strained, a little too cheerful. He told me his own car, an older sedan that was constantly needing repairs, was making a strange noise again. He said he had a very important, last-minute client meeting across town, and he could not risk his car breaking down on the way. He asked if he could borrow my car. I hesitated. I was protective of my new car. It was mine, bought with my father's money, and it felt separate from the life that was slowly starting to feel like it was cracking around the edges. But he sounded so stressed, so desperate. He promised he would be incredibly careful. He swore he would have it back in a few hours, filled with gas to thank me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I told him where the spare key was, and he thanked me profusely, telling me I was a lifesaver. I hung up the phone with a knot in my stomach. Something felt wrong, but I could not put my finger on it. I pushed the feeling down and tried to focus on my work, but the unease lingered like a shadow in the back of my mind. A couple of hours passed. I finished a project for a client and sent off the invoice. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The knot in my stomach tightened. I could not shake the feeling that something was off.
Mark should have been at his meeting by now.
I told myself I was being paranoid, that my anxiety about our marriage was making me see suspicion where there was none. But I could not let it go. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over the car's app. I felt a pang of guilt. Checking up on him felt like a betrayal of trust, but then again, trust had been in short supply between us lately. I took a breath and opened the app. The screen loaded, showing a small map. A blue dot pulsed steadily, indicating my car's location. It was not where his client's office was. I knew that address well. I had been there for company holiday parties. This was somewhere else entirely. It was parked on a quiet residential street in a suburb about 20 minutes away, a neighborhood I had never even been to. My heart started to beat a little faster. Why was he there? I stared at the screen, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe the client changed the meeting location. Maybe he was meeting them at a coffee shop or a restaurant nearby. But the car was parked on a street lined with single-family homes, not a commercial district.
I zoomed in on the map.
The blue dot was stationary right in front of a specific address. A small house with a neatly manicured lawn, according to the satellite image. I tapped the screen to check the car's status. The engine was running. He was idling, waiting. Waiting for what? Or for whom? The feeling of being a paranoid wife was quickly being replaced by a cold, sharp dread. He had lied to me. This was not a client meeting. This was something else. I felt a surge of anger, hot and immediate. He had not just lied. He had used my car, the one thing that was truly mine, to do it. I decided to test him. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed out a text message. "How's the meeting going?" I wrote. I tried to make it sound casual, normal. I hit send and watched the screen, waiting for the three little dots to appear, indicating he was typing a reply. A minute later, his response came through. "Going great," he wrote. "Just wrapping things up now. This client is a tough one, but I think I'm winning him over." The casualness of the lie was like a punch to the gut. He was sitting in my car, on a quiet suburban street, typing out a fabrication without a second thought. The cold dread in my stomach began to burn. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I was on the verge of discovering something I did not want to know. But I also knew I could not turn back. I had to know the truth. I called my best friend, Sarah. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, her voice cheerful. My own voice was shaky when I replied. "Sarah, I think Mark is cheating on me." I explained the situation quickly, the strange request to borrow my car, the location on the app, the lie he had just sent me via text. Sarah was silent for a moment. She had never been Mark's biggest fan. She found him charming but also a bit slippery, something I had always defended him against. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm.
"Okay," she said.
"Don't panic. And do not confront him yet. You need more information." "You need proof," she was right. A location on a map was suspicious, but it was not definitive proof of anything. I needed to know more. "What can you see on the app?" she asked. "Can you see the street name and the house number?" I told her I could. "Look up the address," she said. "See who lives there. Public records are your friend." My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened the web browser on my laptop. I typed the address into the search bar. The first result was a real estate listing from a few years ago. The second was the county's property information database. I clicked on it and entered the address. The page loaded, and a name appeared under current owner, Chloe Vance. The name meant nothing to me. I had never heard it before. It was a woman's name. A woman who lived in the house my husband was parked in front of, in my car, while he was supposed to be at a client meeting. I felt a wave of nausea. This was it. This was real. "I have a name," I told Sarah, my voice barely a whisper. "Chloe Vance." Sarah was quiet for a second. "Okay," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Now we look her up. Social media. See what you can find." I typed Chloe Vance and the name of our city into the search bar of a popular social media site. A few profiles came up, but one stood out. The profile picture was of a smiling woman with long blonde hair, probably around my age. Her profile was public. I clicked on it, my breath held tight in my chest. I started scrolling through her pictures. There were photos of her with friends, photos of her on vacation, photos of her dog. It all looked so normal, so mundane. I felt a flicker of doubt. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was a simple explanation for all of this. And then I saw it. It was a photo from a few weeks ago. She was at a restaurant, smiling at the camera, holding up a glass of wine. But it was not her that caught my eye. It was the man sitting across from her, whose arm was just visible in the frame. On his wrist was a watch. A very specific, very distinctive watch with a dark leather band and a silver face. The watch I had saved up for months to buy for Mark for our third wedding anniversary. There was no mistaking it. It was his arm.
His watch.
My stomach dropped. I felt like I could not breathe. I scrolled frantically through her other photos, my eyes scanning for any other sign of him. I found another one, a group photo from a party. He was in the background, partially obscured, but I could see his face clearly. He was smiling, his arm around her shoulders. The date on the photo was from a night he had told me he was working late, stuck in the office on a major project. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. The lies, the late nights, the emotional distance. It all made sense now. It was not a rough patch. It was a betrayal.
He was not just cheating on me.
He was living a double life. I kept digging, a morbid curiosity compelling me forward. I found a post from 2 months ago. It was a photo of a beautiful beach resort. The caption read, "Best surprise weekend ever. Thanks to my amazing man for spoiling me." I checked the date. It was the same weekend Mark had told me he had to go to a mandatory sales conference out of state. He had seemed so stressed about it, complaining about having to go alone. I had felt sorry for him. I had even packed his suitcase for him, making sure he had everything he needed. Now, looking at this photo, I realized he had not been alone at all. He had been with her. The conference was a lie, and the trip, I suspected, was not paid for by his company. A cold, methodical anger started to replace the shock and hurt. I went to our online banking portal and logged into our joint savings account. My eyes scanned the transaction history for the dates of the conference, and there it was. A charge for over $2,000 to the exact resort from Chloe's photo. He had used our money, the money we were saving for a down payment on a bigger house, to take his mistress on a romantic getaway. The sheer audacity of it stole my breath. He had not just broken my trust, he had stolen from me, from our future. He had used my support, my belief in him, to fund his affair. The betrayal was so much deeper than I had imagined. It was not just emotional, it was financial. It was a complete and utter violation of our partnership. I started taking screenshots. I saved the photos from her social media page, the ones with his watch and his face in the background. I saved the photo of the resort. I downloaded the bank statement showing the charge. I created a new folder on my desktop and named it Proof. Each screenshot I took felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself, a piece of the truth that he had tried so hard to hide from me. The feeling of being a victim began to recede, replaced by a steely resolve. I was not going to cry. I was not going to scream. I was going to be calm. I was going to be strategic. He had made a colossal mistake. He had underestimated me. And he had done it all while sitting in my car, a car that was equipped with a feature he clearly did not know about. I looked back at the car app on my phone. The blue was still there, pulsating in front of Chloe Vance's house. The engine was still running. He was probably inside with her now, laughing, touching her, completely oblivious to the fact that his world was about to come crashing down around him. A plan began to form in my mind, cold and clear. He had used my car to facilitate his betrayal. It was only fitting that my car would be the instrument of his downfall. I was not just going to confront him. I was going to create a situation he could not lie his way out of. I was going to make sure he was exposed, completely and thoroughly. I called Sarah back. "You were right," I said, my voice steady now, devoid of the earlier panic. "It's worse than I thought." I told her everything I had found. The watch, the photos, the resort, the money from our savings account. She listened patiently, letting out a low whistle when I told her about the bank statement. "That man has no shame," she said, her voice laced with anger on my behalf. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath. "He's still there," I said. "He's still at her house in my car. I have an idea, Sarah. It might be a little crazy, but I think it's perfect." I explained my plan to her, my voice growing stronger with every word. I told her about the remote engine immobilizer. For a moment, she was silent. Then she started to laugh. It was not a humorous laugh, but one of pure, unadulterated appreciation for the plan's poetic justice. "Do it," she said. "Absolutely do it. And call me the second it's done." Hanging up the phone, I felt a strange sense of calm. The decision was made. There was no turning back. I watched the app for another 10 minutes, my heart a steady, rhythmic drum in my chest. I imagined the scene inside the house. Were they talking about me? Were they laughing at me? The thought sent a fresh jolt of anger through me, solidifying my resolve. He did not deserve a quiet, private confrontation. He did not deserve the chance to spin a story or beg for forgiveness in the comfort of our home. He deserved to be embarrassed. He deserved to be put on the spot, stripped of his lies, and left to deal with the consequences of his actions in the most public way I could manage. I opened the car's app one last time. I navigated to the security tab. The option was there in bold red letters. Disable engine. A small warning popped up, asking me to confirm the action. It stated that the engine would not be able to be restarted until the command was cancelled from the app or the physical key fob was used within the vehicle. This was it. This was the point of no return. My finger hovered over the confirmation button. I thought about our wedding day, the promises he had made to me. I thought about all the nights I had waited up for him, worried, while he was with her. I thought about my father, whose memory he had disrespected by using the car I bought with his money for this sordid affair. I closed my eyes, took one final, deep breath, and pressed the button. A notification appeared on my screen. Engine successfully disabled. I stared at the words, a slow smile spreading across my face. It was done. Phase 1 of my plan was complete. Now all I had to do was wait. I knew it would not be long. He would walk out of her house, get into my car, and try to start it. And when it did not turn over, his perfect little afternoon would come to an abrupt and confusing end. I sat back in my chair, my phone in my hand, and I waited for it to ring. I felt a sense of power I had not felt in a very long time. For months, he had been the one in control, the one with the secrets. But now, the power was mine. I was the one holding the kill switch. It took less than 5 minutes. My phone buzzed on the desk, and his name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before I answered, just to make him sweat a little. When I finally picked up, I made my voice sound as normal and unconcerned as possible. "Hello," I said. His voice, on the other hand, was tight with panic. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "Something really weird is going on with your car. I came out from my meeting and it won't start. It's completely dead." I feigned surprise. "Oh, that's strange," I said. "It's a brand new car. Are you sure you're doing it right?" I could hear the frustration in his voice as he replied. "Yes, I'm sure I'm doing it right," he snapped. "I'm not an idiot. The lights come on, but the engine won't turn over. It's like the battery is dead, but all the electronics are working." This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment to pull the rug out from under him. "That's so weird," I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy. "Where are you exactly?" "I can call roadside assistance for you." He hesitated for a fraction of a second, and in that hesitation, I knew I had him.
I'm
on Elm Street," he said, naming the street where his client's office was actually located. The meeting ran a little late, and now the lie was so blatant, so pathetic. He was still trying to protect his story, even in the middle of a panic. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before I delivered the final blow. "Elm Street," I said, my voice turning cold and sharp. "That's funny, because according to the app on my phone, my car is located on Maple Drive. To be precise, it's parked directly in front of house number 124. So, let me ask you again, Mark. Where are you?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head as he tried to process what I had just said. He was caught. There was no explanation, no escape. He sputtered for a moment, making incoherent noises before he finally managed to form a word. "What?" he stammered. "What app? What are you talking about?" I did not give him an inch. "I'm talking about the app that lets me see exactly where my car is at all times," I said, my voice like ice. "The app that also lets me disable the engine, by the way. I know everything, Mark. I know about Chloe Vance. I know about the trips. I know you used our savings to pay for them. I know it all." He was speechless. There was nothing he could say. Every lie he had ever told me had just been rendered useless by a simple blue dot on a map. "So," I continued, my voice calm and controlled, "here's what's going to happen. My car is going to stay right where it is with its engine disabled until I decide to come and get it. You, on the other hand, can find your own way home. I suggest you ask your girlfriend for a ride." I did not wait for a reply. I ended the call and tossed my phone onto the sofa. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees weak. The truth was out. The confrontation, at least the first part of it, was over. I had done it. I had taken back control. But I was not finished yet. Leaving him stranded was one thing. Reclaiming my car and my dignity was another. I needed to see this through to the end. I called my brother David. He was younger than me, but he had always been my protector, my rock. I told him a condensed version of the story, leaving out the more painful details for later. I just said that Mark had lied to me, that he had taken my car to see another woman, and that I had disabled it and needed a ride to go pick it up. David did not ask any questions. He just said, "I'll be there in 10 minutes." When David pulled up, I got into his car, my own car keys clutched tightly in my hand. I gave him the address, and we drove in silence. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, hurt, but also a strange sense of empowerment. As we turned onto Maple Drive, I saw it, my SUV, parked on the side of the road. And standing next to it, looking lost and pathetic, was Mark. He was pacing back and forth, running his hands through his hair. From the front window of house number 124, I could see a curtain twitch. Chloe was watching. The sight of her, hiding in her house while the man she was sleeping with dealt with the fallout, filled me with a new level of contempt. David pulled up behind my car. I got out and walked towards Mark, my step steady and purposeful. He rushed towards me, his face a mixture of desperation and shame. "Listen," he started, his voice pleading. "We can talk about this." "I can explain." I held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "No," I said, my voice firm. "There is nothing to explain. You have been lying to me for months.
You have been stealing from me.
There is no explanation that can fix that." I walked past him, ignoring his attempts to grab my arm. I pointed my key fob at my car and pressed the unlock button. The car chirped and the lights flashed. I got into the driver's seat and started the engine. It turned over immediately, purring to life as if nothing had happened. Mark stood by the driver's side window, his face pressed close to the glass. "Please," he begged. "Don't do this." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I felt nothing. The love I once had for him was gone, replaced by a cold, hard emptiness. "Your things will be in bags on the front lawn tomorrow morning," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Do not try to come into the house." I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb, not even glancing in my rearview mirror. I did not want to see him standing there, stranded on his mistress's street. I did not want to see her face in the window. I just wanted to go home, to my home, and begin the process of erasing him from my life. David followed me home, his presence a silent, steady source of support. When I got out of my car in my own driveway, I finally let the tears fall. They were not tears of sadness, but of relief. The worst was over. The truth was out. And I was free. The drive home was a blur. I was operating on autopilot, my mind still replaying the scene on that quiet suburban street. The image of Mark's panicked face, the twitching curtain in Chloe's window, the satisfying roar of my car's engine as it came back to life under my control. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, the adrenaline was starting to wear off, replaced by a profound sense of exhaustion. David pulled in behind me and got out of his car. He walked over and just wrapped me in a hug. I leaned against him, the tears I had been holding back finally starting to flow. He did not say anything, he just held me, and that was exactly what I needed. After a few minutes, I pulled myself together. "Thank you for coming to get me," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Of course," he said. "That's what brothers are for. Are you going to be okay?" I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I will be," I said. "I think the worst is over." We went inside, and I made a pot of tea. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Mark and I had shared hundreds of meals, and I told David everything. I told him about the late nights, the financial deception, the social media posts. I showed him the folder of screenshots on my laptop. He listened intently, his expression growing darker with every detail I revealed. When I was finished, he shook his head in disgust. "I never liked him," he said. "I always thought there was something off about him. I'm so sorry you had to go through this." Hearing him say that, hearing my own feelings validated, was a small comfort. For months, I had been telling myself I was being paranoid, that I was the one with the problem. But I was not. My intuition had been right all along. What are you going to do now? David asked. I've already told him his things will be on the lawn tomorrow, I said. I'm going to call a lawyer first thing in the morning. I want him out of my life, completely and permanently. David nodded in approval.
Good, he said.
You deserve so much better. Do you want me to stay here tonight? I can sleep on the couch. I considered his offer, but I shook my head. No, I said. I need to do this myself. I need to be alone in my own space. But will you come back tomorrow morning to help me? I don't want to be here alone when he potentially shows up. He agreed immediately. He promised to be back at 8 o'clock sharp and to help me change the locks on the doors. After David left, the house felt cavernously empty. Every room held a memory of Mark, of the life we had built together. I walked through the house, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. I went into our bedroom and opened his closet. His clothes were all there, neatly hung and folded. I started pulling them out, armful by armful, and piling them onto the bed. I went into the bathroom and gathered his toiletries. I went into the office and packed up his books and papers. I worked methodically, like a robot, not allowing myself to feel anything. With each item I packed into a trash bag, it felt like I was cleansing my home, purging his presence from it. It took me hours, but by the time I was done, every trace of him was gone from the main living areas. His life was now contained in a dozen black garbage bags piled by the front door. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. It was a start. I slept fitfully that night, my mind a torrent of racing thoughts. But when I woke up in the morning, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. David arrived right on time with a toolbox and a new set of locks for the doors. While he got to work changing the locks, I started dragging the bags of Mark's belongings out onto the front lawn. It was a strange, almost surreal experience, piling up the remnants of a 5-year marriage on the grass for all the neighbors to see. But I did not feel shame. I felt liberated. This was not my shame to carry. It was his. Just as David was finishing up with the front door lock, Mark's car pulled up to the curb. Not his old, unreliable sedan, but a rideshare. He got out and saw the bags on the lawn. His face fell. He walked towards the house, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "What is this?" he demanded, gesturing to the pile of his belongings. "I told you," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I'm done. This is your stuff. Take it and go." He tried to push past me to get to the front door. "I live here," he said, his voice rising. "You can't just lock me out." David stepped forward, placing himself between me and Mark. "Yes, she can," David said, his voice low and menacing. "This is her house now. You need to leave." Mark looked from David to me, his eyes pleading. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "Let's just talk. We can work this out. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I love you." The words sounded hollow, meaningless. "No," I said. "You don't love me. You don't lie to, steal from, and humiliate someone you love. You love yourself. And you love the comfortable life I provided for you. But that's over now. Take your things and get out of my sight." He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. He finally seemed to realize that it was truly over. There was no talking his way out of this one. Defeated, he turned and started loading the bags into the trunk of the waiting car. It took him several trips. The whole time, I stood on the porch with David, watching him. I did not feel a shred of pity. I just felt numb. As he was loading the last bag, my phone rang. I looked at the caller ID. It was his mother, Eleanor. I almost did not answer, but then I decided I wanted to have this conversation. I wanted to close this chapter completely. I answered the phone and put it on speaker. "Hello, Eleanor," I said. Her voice was shrill, filled with indignation. "What is the meaning of this?" she screeched. "Mark just called me hysterical. He said you threw him out. After everything he does for you. How could you be so cruel?" I took a deep breath. "Eleanor," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Your son has been having an affair for months. He used our joint savings, money we were saving for a house, to take his mistress on a vacation. Yesterday, He lied to my face and took my car, the car I bought with my own inheritance money, to go and see her. So, you'll have to forgive me if I'm not feeling particularly concerned about his feelings right now. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Eleanor had always treated Mark like he was a saint, incapable of doing any wrong. She had always subtly implied that I was the difficult one, the one who was not supportive enough.
He
would never do that, she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. Mark is a good boy, no, Eleanor, I said. Mark is a grown man who made a series of selfish and destructive choices. And now he has to live with the consequences. I suggest you get your spare room ready, because it sounds like he's going to need a place to stay. Do not call me again. I hung up the phone before she could reply. I looked at David, and he gave me a small, approving smile. Well handled, he said. Mark finished loading his things and got back into the rideshare. He gave me one last look, a look of pure desperation, before the car pulled away from the curb and drove down the street, out of my life. As soon as he was gone, a wave of pure, unadulterated relief washed over me. It was done. He was gone. I walked back into my house, and closed the newly locked door behind me. The air inside already felt lighter. I had a long road ahead of me, a divorce to navigate, a life to rebuild. But for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The future was uncertain, but it was mine. And I would never again let anyone have the power to make me feel so small, so foolish, in my own life. The next morning, I called a lawyer. The legal process was draining, but also incredibly validating. My lawyer, a sharp and no-nonsense woman named Susan, was impressed by the evidence I had collected. The screenshots, the bank statements, the location data from the car app. It was all there, a clear and undeniable record of his deceit. This makes our job much easier, she told me during our first meeting. His financial infidelity, in particular, will be very helpful when it comes to dividing assets. Mark, it turned out, did not want to make things easy. Spurred on by his mother, he tried to fight for half of everything, including a stake in the value of my car. His argument was that since we were married, all assets were marital property. Susan shut that down quickly. The car was purchased with inheritance funds, which are typically considered separate property, she explained to me. We have a clear paper trail showing the money coming from your father's estate and going directly to the car dealership. He doesn't have a leg to stand on. The battle over the savings account was a bit more contentious. He claimed the $2,000 he spent on the conference was a legitimate business expense, even though he had no receipts to prove it. But the evidence was overwhelming. The charge was from a resort, not a conference center, and the dates matched perfectly with Chloe's social media post. In the end, the judge ordered that the $2,000 be deducted from his share of our marital assets and returned to me. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. It was not about the money. It was about the principle. The divorce proceedings dragged on for several months. During that time, I had to endure a barrage of angry texts and voicemails from Eleanor, accusing me of being vindictive and trying to ruin her son's life. I never responded. I simply forwarded them to Susan, who added them to the growing file of his family's unreasonable behavior. Mark himself tried to contact me a few times, sending long, rambling emails full of apologies and excuses. He blamed his actions on stress at work, on feeling neglected by me, on a midlife crisis. He never once took full responsibility for his choices. I never replied to those either. There was nothing he could say that would change what he had done. Through it all, my friends and family were my lifeline. Sarah was a constant source of support, calling me every day to check in, bringing over takeout and movies on the nights when I felt particularly low. David was my rock, always ready to help with practical things, from moving furniture to helping me set up a new home office. He even helped me go through the last of Mark's things, the stuff he had left behind in the garage, and take them to a donation center. It was a cleansing ritual, a final severing of the ties that had bound me to a life of lies. One of the most surprising sources of support came from an unexpected place. A few weeks after I had kicked Mark out, I received a message on social media from a woman I did not know. Her name was Jessica, and her message was brief. I think we have a mutual acquaintance in Chloe Vance, she wrote. I used to be friends with her. I'm so sorry for what you've been through. If you ever want to talk, let me know. I was hesitant at first, but something about her message seemed sincere. I agreed to meet her for coffee. Jessica was a kind, down-to-earth woman who told me she had been friends with Chloe for years, but had recently ended the friendship. I just couldn't stand by and watch her be so proud of breaking up a marriage, Jessica explained. She would brag about Mark, about the gifts he bought her, the trips they took. She knew he was married. She just didn't care. Jessica told me that Chloe had been completely blindsided by the events of that Tuesday afternoon. She had been watching from the window when I showed up and drove my car away, leaving Mark stranded. She was furious, Jessica said with a small, wry smile. Not at Mark for lying to her, but at you for embarrassing her. She called him weak for not being able to control his wife. Hearing this, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. My plan had worked even better than I had hoped. It had not just exposed Mark, it had exposed the true nature of the woman he had chosen to be with. Their secret, exciting affair had been dragged out into the harsh light of day, and it had turned ugly and pathetic. Jessica told me that Mark had tried to continue the relationship with Chloe, but it had quickly fallen apart. The drama and the public humiliation had been too much for her. She liked the idea of being the other woman, the one who was more exciting than the wife, Jessica said. But when it got real and messy, she wanted no part of it. Last I heard, she dumped him and is already dating someone else. As for Mark, Jessica told me he was living in his mother's basement, completely miserable. He had lost his wife, his home, his mistress, and a significant amount of his money in the divorce settlement. His reputation at work had also suffered, as word of his messy personal life had inevitably gotten around the office. He was a man who had prided himself on his image, on his charm and his success. And now all of that was gone. He had nothing left but his enabling mother and a pile of garbage bags filled with the life he had thrown away. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a profound sense of peace. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in years. I had survived. I had fought for myself, and I had won. That evening, I went out to dinner with Sarah and David to celebrate. We raised a glass, not to the end of my marriage, but to the beginning of my new life. A life based on honesty, respect, and my own strength. A few months later, I was driving home from a client meeting, the windows down, the music playing. My car, my beautiful, reliable car, hummed along smoothly. I thought about that awful day, the day I had used its technology to turn the tables on my cheating husband. It was a painful memory, but it was also a reminder of my own resilience. It was the day I stopped being a victim and started being the one in control of my own story. I pulled into my driveway, got out of my car, and looked at my little house. It was no longer just a house. It was my home, a place of safety and peace, a place where there were no more secrets, no more lies. The lingering unease of the past year was finally gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. Mark had tried to use what was mine to betray me. He had learned the hard way that some things and some people have a kill switch, and I was no longer afraid to use it. The future was mine to write, and I was holding the pen and the keys.